Hi guys, welcome to another video. My name is James and I'm from the UK and I'm an expat teacher living in Thailand. Um, so my videos, if you're new to the channel, are about my experience over the last 10 years living and working in Asia, starting off in China and now in Thailand. Um, so if we go back to the last video, something kind of not so nice happened, at least for a period of a 10-day period, where my company was in trouble with the local immigration police, and it was very scary, very scary. This was in Beijing, China, and I really had no idea what was going to happen. you know um, so the end result is that nothing did happen. I got my passport back and I was able to go back to work at my company. They obviously paid some fines and everything, and things went back to normal. It was also quite a sad time because some of the people I worked with who weren't on the correct visa, they got deported, and I was sad for them, and it wasn't very nice to see them get taken away. I think they had to do some time in a detention center. But getting back to the story, the next day, my work just said, okay, let's go back to normal, go back to work. And so I had to go to work in the main school now, working with the sort of age 3 to 11, 12-year-old kids, which is the most common type of age group or was in China anyway, for this kind of after school establishment. I had been previously working with infants, which was quite interesting. But now I was working with the kindergarten age kids, and the first thing I had to do was I had to learn a demo. Now, what is a demo? So a demo is where you try to recruit new customers, new students, and you have to do like a little short kind of 30-minute class based around a theme or a topic. It often involves presenting some basic vocabulary such as colors, and then you have to do some games, just to practice the vocabulary. And you do some kind of introduction song and closing song, and that you get off the internet or whatever. And yeah, the idea is you try and get the kids to like you and be interested, and the parents, hopefully sign up. So I had to learn this demo. At that point, I was quite good at learning demos because I had to do a lot of that with the infants school that they had. They kind of had this kind of soft play area that I had to, practice motor skills with the 2-year-olds and things like that. So they were quite long demos, actually, quite complicated, lots of studying. So this one was pretty easy, actually. But the only nerve-wracking thing is you had to perform these things in front of your co-workers, and they're adults, and you have to do some extra acting, and they also do some acting, which can make it better or worse. Sometimes they pretend to be awkward kids or whatever, just to create more of a challenge for you. So anyway, I got through that. It was okay, and I think they were just looking for me to have an idea. They didn't want someone coming in who was completely useless or whatever. So, but I picked up enough skills, teaching skills at that point. I'd been teaching about a year, so I picked up enough to be able to do a decent job. And then I just had to kind of start working at that side of the business, that side of the company. I seem to remember there wasn't a lot of guidance about how you teach the lessons. There's no kind of PowerPoint that you had to go through, because they had big screens and it was on a computer, and there was no kind of you had to kind of create your own lessons almost. They had like books, like storybooks, teaching phonics, which you had to go through, but I had no idea how to teach this stuff. And it's kind of strange because the first company I was at First Leap, they were very precise about everything. Every lesson had a slide, and you go through each slide, and you don't have a lot of wiggle room, whereas this company was very much putting the burden on the teachers to kind of come up with how to teach these lessons. And of course there were other teachers there to give you ideas, and you just kind of muddle through, but it just seemed a bit too loose. It was a bit loose there. The teachers kind of did what they wanted really, and various managers, they would hire various managers who would come in, who would try to corral the teachers, but the teachers seemed to have a lot of power there at that point, because they were all friends, and they were the kind of the star of the show as they saw it, and they would be very resistant to any kind of manager coming in saying, okay, we're going to change this and that and the other. And in one sense it was kind of fun, because you didn't feel a lot of pressure. You didn't speak to parents. Your TA did that, so you mostly didn't really feel any real stress there. The only problem you got was from sometimes your co-teacher or the TA, teaching assistant, who was a local teacher. They would kind of do stuff in the class that would bother me. They would kind of I'd be trying to teach something, and then they just kind of interrupt and take over, and I just think this kind of put me off quite a bit. I'd be thinking, my mind would be going in a direction, and then all of a sudden you're just like, okay, you could just kind of interrupted my flow. It would have been better if they waited until I finished what I was doing, and then maybe they could have done something after, or just said, oh, can I try something, something like that. But instead they just kind of inserted themselves into the middle of something I was trying to do. So that would sometimes create friction. I remember sometimes being extremely annoyed because of this. But at the same time, I was still quite new, and maybe they did know better in some ways. But still, it's very easy to develop an ego. And so anyway, speaking of the managers that they tried to bring in, this is where things once again at this company got interesting, and not in a good way. So things, after the whole problem with the police, the immigration, things settled down, and I was just kind of, learning, trying to get better, all that stuff, and things were going okay. Then they brought in this new manager called Melody, or something like that. And she was, she had a viewpoint that she was going to try to corral or really get in charge of this center, and she'd obviously been brought in to do that. The company had known they'd had issues with her before with other foreign teachers, because the way she is, she fell out with some of those teachers because she was trying to, manage them, which they didn't want to be managed. So, And unfortunately, one of the teachers that she'd fallen out with um, was, working with me at my new branch. So all of a sudden, there's this huge amount of tension. They don't, this other female teacher and the manager, they already know they really dislike each other. So now we've got this kind of problem. And of course, with the teachers being all friendly and been working together for a long time, and bearing in mind, they also spend time outside of work together. So they had relationships that went beyond work, the social relationships. So it's kind of like a mini union, unofficial union they had going on. So I seem to remember we were told we had to start having meetings, which was a new thing for me anyway. And so basically, we went off for our lunch, and for whatever reason, this girl who'd had a problem with the manager in the past, and the other more established foreign teachers, they decided they were not going to follow her instructions. They were just going to have their lunch like they normally do and come back when they want. Now, I was quite new, I was still pretty new at that point, and I didn't feel very comfortable doing that because I'm like, well, what's the problem? She's a new boss, just, it's a meeting, whatever. But there'd obviously been some issues in the past, and they were trying to, with the more experienced teachers, and they were trying to send a message, to this new manager. So I just I felt a bit uncomfortable, but I just went along with, the teachers because I was quite friendly with them, but I didn't understand really what the issue was. And so I remember turning up to the meeting, and we were late. And the manager was pretty angry, and I remember sitting there going, oh, here we go already. There's some problem immediately. And it was just very uncomfortable meeting, and it's just not a good situation again to be in. So these problems kind of built up over the coming weeks. And then of course you had one of the foreign teachers, a Russian guy, he decided that he kind of became one of these people who always seems to want to be friends with the authorities, the managers. So he was friends with one of the owners of the company, and then he decided to become friends with this new manager, and he put himself at odds against the other teachers. And so he became like a scab or whatever. And this everything just became really uncomfortable at work. Just this war that was going on, this kind of office politics type situation. And all I wanted to do, I just want to go to work, do my job, go home, try and enjoy myself if I can. But then you go into a situation at work where everyone's not feeling good, and this just kept on building up and building up and building up and building up. And what happened was, in the end, the headmaster of the school, so this manager was kind of manager of teachers, this Melody character, the headmaster of the school, the big boss, as they call him in China, big boss, he noticed that all of his foreign teachers were just, not happy about it. And he came to the conclusion that, well, maybe we need to just make a change with this manager, because we don't want to lose all our teachers because of this. we'd rather just lose the manager. Much like a football team, you know, get rid of the manager. It's one person. You don't want to get rid of your players, you know, especially as you know they're not cheap. And you know, to be fair, in that industry at that time, you know, we were quite expensive. So not like a football player, obviously, but you know, in the context of teaching English as a foreigner in China or anywhere in the world, to be honest. So he called people in for some uncomfortable chat, and you know, it's just like, oh, you know. Anyway, I just tried to, you know, be diplomatic and just say, yeah, I mean, it's okay, but you know, it's a bit uncomfortable and all of that. But obviously, the girl who had a real problem with the manager from the past, she pretty much came out and said, you know, I don't want to work here with her, or something to that effect. So the manager decided to, you know, to fire this Melody person. And well, what happened then was once again involved the immigration authorities, because what the you know, the teachers who had a particular problem with his manager, they didn't think of the fact that their position wasn't entirely secure in the country. So maybe their position was secure at the school, but they were on student visas, and they had luckily gotten away with the immigration raid that happened 6 months earlier, because they were just their school was closed, or they were in a different city at the time. I think they were in Shanghai or something at one of their branches, and they managed to get kind of, you know, hidden away or out the back door or something, and they didn't get caught. But anyway, they were still very vulnerable, you know, and they were on student visas, and they had this ridiculous situation where they would go to university once a term or something, you know, which is, you know, crazy. Anyway, so what this Melody did was, she, being the type of person she was, she didn't just accept getting fired. She informed the immigration authorities that the two teachers who she had a big problem with and who she blamed for getting her fired were actually working illegally, which they were. And yeah, she had access to documents, and she took the documents to the police, and of course the police came, arrested. Actually, I think they arrested them at their home. Maybe they found them at their home, arrested them, and of course they were detained, went to detention center, and then deported. And so yeah, that was another fun 6 months working at that school or at that company in Beijing, China, back in 2017. It was 2017. So you're asking, why the hell did I stay there? You know, but I think, you know, for the most part, I liked the people there. And of course, you had the golden handcuffs, which was, what is golden handcuffs? Well, you know, money's too good to leave. And that's essentially, you know, my thinking at the time. So anyway, that's enough for today's video. Please stay tuned for some more mishaps and happenings that you know, went on back in the day. And again, another warning, you know, you gotta make sure your documents are in check if you work abroad, especially now. Otherwise, you know, you're vulnerable. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and see you on the next one. Okay, bye bye.